Hey, so we're going to move into an area called Live Trace. So far, we've been working with artwork that is generated by us using a brush or a pencil or a shape tool, pen tool, whatever. Now we're going to get into working with raster images that we can convert into vector forms. And a lot of really valuable uses and applications to this technique. And you'll just kind of have to figure how this will kind of fold into your workflow on your own. But a few things. What we're going to do is we're going to have a look at a very simple approach to Live Trace and get more detailed, and then eventually getting into Live Paint as well. And our next project will be based on this process here. So we've been working with artboards that start off, pretty much empty, and we've been generating our own lines and all that for our projects and these exercises. Now we're going to get into working with images and how to get them into Illustrator and how that all works. And I'm not going to get too heavy into working with the images yet. I'm going to save that for when we get into our layout stuff, working with like magazine designs and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different how we get these images into our document. You generally should always have a document that is open and sort of built to your specifications of whatever it is that you're creating. That's usually the first thing we do. We go, all right, I'm going to make a project, or I'm going to make a brochure, or I'm doing a logo design or something like that. And you have to think about what size you're going to be working with. Then we need to get the image into that document. A common mistake that a lot of people make is that you will open an image from Illustrator's file menu instead of doing it the right way, which is called placing. So if you go to your file menu, you'll see that there's open. Well, you want to avoid that. I don't know why. This is a hard habit for a lot of you guys to break, but it's not what we're doing. What we're going to do is we're going to place an image in an existing document. If you go open and choose your image, it's going to open up a new document window. It's going to be something that has your image in it, but you're going to be stripped down of a lot of options. Colors will be gone, different. Just basically, it's not the right way to do it. So take the place feature from the file menu, and a window will pop up and ask what you want to put in there. I have files for you that you'll be working with as you go along with me here. And the first one is going to be this poetry Photoshop document. So several things that we'll be working with, several images will be Photoshop files, some will be just JPEGs. Pretty much any image format can be placed into Illustrator. In this case, we're just using a Photoshop file from a project that I did a couple of years ago. And this is nice just because it's simple. It's just some handwriting. Now, the button in the bottom will say place. You'll hit place. And the image will be placed in the center of your document. And right now, this is a linked file. This file doesn't actually live inside this document. It's actually linked and just referenced here. It's a link to a file in the computer's hard drive somewhere, and Illustrator's simply just borrowing it. And you can do pretty much anything with linked files. It's just that the issue that we'll see later once we get into our magazine work is that link can be broken. If you were to be working on a machine at home on your laptop or something like that, and you had an image that you had placed as a linked file in your document, and you did some work on it, and then you saved your Illustrator file and then took that Illustrator file to a lab, but you didn't include the image on your little thumb drive or hard drive or email, whatever, you'd open up your Illustrator file and it would say, sorry, we don't know where this image is, and it won't have it drawn for you. So that's what's going on here. It's just a link, and we'll get into embedding images and all that later. So here is a simple black and white Photoshop file, handwriting, the word poetry. We're going to take it and turn it into a vector. There is an area you could go in the object menu. Down towards the bottom there's live trace. Live trace has make and expand, make and convert to live paint or tracing options. And this is not the most convenient place to go. The most convenient place to go is to use this control bar here. And the control bar has information about the file, and then there's a button for live trace, and I would stay away from the button. Next to the button is a little rectangle with a triangle in it that is your tracing presets and options. And if you click on that, it'll allow you to choose quickly from one of the presets if you wanted to, but I would again recommend you stay away from this. The best place to go is this bottom option, which is called tracing options, and it opens up your tracing options window. And this window has all of the presets that you saw there in that list, adjustments and trace settings that you can do. Before you start messing with any of these, it's in your best interest to click on preview so that you can see what these changes are going to do to your image. So right after I pressed preview, it gave me a little rendering down in my canvas window showing me what that live trace is going to do to my handwriting. And I recommend you go through the different presets just to see what each one would do. What's the difference between a color versus a photo low fidelity? You're not going to see a lot of change on this very simple image. Not until you get into some of the like hand-drawn sketch or comic art or technical drawing. You'll see that several different things are going on here if you watch the adjustments and trace settings window. I'm just going to leave it on default for now. So under your adjustments, the first thing you see is mode. Mode has black and white, grayscale, or color. We don't really need color or grayscale because we're dealing with just this handwriting, and it can just be black. So we're going to leave it on black and white. Threshold, if you click on the right of that, you have a slider from 0 to 255. And this is going to basically allow you to add more of a preference toward what the whites or the blacks. And we're not going to see too much change in this one. We'll see threshold play a much larger factor with some of the other images that we bring in. We have a blur. A blur is going to end up allowing you to soften your lines a little bit. So as I start to blur up, you can see that the word poetry ends up getting quite a bit smoother. And if I really push it, like to 8 pixels, It's very smooth. But I'm losing some of the nice detail, the hole and the loop of the T, and so on. So blur can definitely work to your advantage. It can also end up taking away some really nice touches of detail to your image. Over on trace settings window, you can choose whether or not you want your trace to be made out of just fills. So right now it's set on fills. I'm not going to have any strokes. And this is just all going to be paths with a black fill. You could also just uncheck that and choose strokes. That's weird. Kind of went back. There we go. So now strokes is looking at the outlines and just leaving a stroke on there, no fill. Obviously, in this case, not something that really benefits us. And you can do combinations of both strokes and fills too. But generally, you just want fills, or you might just want strokes. I've never really seen the two of them working too well together. You have something called your path fitting. This is the field that deals with, oh look, it tells you right there. There's my little cheat sheet. Control over the distance between the traced shape and the original pixel shape. So how accurate is the edge of that path going to be from the original raster image? Minimum area, little holes and stuff like that, you know, like the little holes that are in the top of the T. There aren't too many small holes in this thing, but if it were a sketch, like an illustration or something like that, it might have some small holes and whatnot that you could eliminate simply by increasing your minimum area. So I'm going to increase my minimum area to 490, and that hole in the top of the T goes away. And if I bring it back down, it should open back up. So that's your minimum area. And then you have the corner angle, and that deals with the sort of the nature of your path and how it deals with corners. You can round them off a little bit. The last thing at the bottom there is ignore white. So this is something that's helpful. Here, I'll show you real quick. I'll just cancel out of this. I will make just a solid shape in the back. So I've got this rectangle of blue behind my image of poetry. And when I go to that live trace window, oh, what did I do? I had a little bit of blur in there. That was good. Preview this thing, make sure I can see it. And you can see that it analyzes the paths and creates a black and white version of my raster file. And often you don't want the white area that it's part of your scan or you know, whatever it is that you brought in there. So you can choose to ignore white and it'll just go away and it'll only retain the black lines. So once you're happy with the sort of the look and feel of it, you hit trace, and it's still kind of a reference of an image. It has been converted to the appearance of vector artwork, but I still wouldn't be able to select any paths with like my direct selection tool here. The final step in doing a live trace so that you can manipulate your paths or have a little more access to that artwork would be to expand it, and there's an expand button right on the top control bar there. So when you click on expand, it kind of finalizes the live trace, and now you can see that my path is selected. I have all my points and anchors that I could select individually with my direct selection tool. And I can also now go to my control bar and change my fill to be just a, a different color other than black or something. So with only a few steps, I was able to take some hand-drawn lettering, that was scanned in, and slightly tweaked in Photoshop just to make sure I had good contrast, good whites and blacks. And then now I've got a vector version of it. So, I could start to, embellish my path a little bit and maybe make a fatter inside of the P if that was something that I was interested in doing. I'm not really that interested in doing that right now, though. But why am I doing it? It's because it's addictive. I can't stop. There, whatever. All right, so now it's an editable vector form instead of being a raster image. How is this a benefit? Well, we know that raster images do not scale up very well. They end up getting pixelated and pretty junky. Vector images are infinitely scalable. So if this were a piece of handwriting that I wanted to have some freedom of scaling up with, then to come in here and turn it into a vector form and then do my scale change and place it into whatever kind of a art piece or design piece that I was working with could be much more crisp and clean than having to worry about the pixels kind of blowing up. I'm going to select both of these things and get rid of them. So that's very simple. Now I'm going to place another image. This is a drawing that I did many years ago. It's a doodle of this little sort of chicken that lives in a trailer park or something. I call it Trailer Bird. I don't know. He's got the little wife beater on, and a big old belly. So this little guy is a scan, and I had drawn it pretty small. I think that at some point long ago when I scanned it, I think it got scaled up because it doesn't look very crisp and clean. So if I were going to use this, it would probably be in my best interest to see if I could turn it into vectors and kind of maintain that sketchy feel, but clean it up a little bit and make it so that it's not so noisy with pixels that have been scaled up. So with it selected, I'm going to go to my Live Trace preset tracing options, hit preview, and then just right off the bat, the default trace is kind of somewhat pleasing. But I could try some of these different presets, see if there's anything in there that that I enjoy. Lettering obviously is going to be really true to the form because you're trying to create outlines of letters, from a book scan or something. But you can jump around and just see what different results the tracing presets have on your illustration, and then playing with your threshold is going to be much more visible here than how what it was doing on the word poetry. You can see how it ends up getting very dark with the higher threshold, and then much more washed out and favoring the whites as I take my threshold down. A little tricky though, because that feather that's kind of floating in the air, kind of gets lost when I'm in a threshold area of something that's kind of pleasant, where I'm favoring more whites. Well, that feather doesn't really even pop anymore. So a lot of times you end up finding yourself doing several live traces of the same image and kind of compositing a new image where you do one to favor the bird, you do one maybe to favor the fence, and then another one where you favor the feather, and then you can kind of just eliminate all the stuff that's not part of the image that you were favoring, and then have multiple layers composited on top of each other to make a better image. So whatever, I'm going to say I'm pretty happy at 123, and I'm going to hit trace, and then my last step will be to expand. And at this point now I can go in and fix paths or eliminate things that I'm not really happy about them being there. because it's all vector lines now. And this is, you know, super clean edges. It doesn't look like a sketch anymore, but there's no doubt that this is a hand-drawn illustration. It just has a little bit of a different sort of appeal to it like this. I will delete you. So placing, you just got to get used to placing, and that's going to help you out. We've got this little sketch guy too. We can come in here. So here's a sketch that was scanned in, and this little guy has some serious attitude. But it's a great start. If you find that you work best doing, you know, SketchUp work on paper, it's a real easy transition to get that work digitized and turned into a vector form. So this guy, you know, just kind of a rough reference of a scan. Then you can go in and live trace this little gentleman with the attitude and see, you know, what kind of results you get by messing with your threshold, messing with your blurs, and so on. You can kind of end up eliminating some unnecessary lines, drawing more emphasis to the lines that you do want to retain. It's pretty slick, very slick. I don't think I'm going to need you anymore either. So the 3 little files in there that I'd like you to play around with, experimenting with the basic live trace. So that'll be this video. Now we're going to jump into the next video, which will be dealing with more detailed images like photos.